Hi, my name is Renata Grandao. I am the founder of Premier Elite Pageants and the founder of Renata Grandao Designs and Communications.
Hello, everyone. It's Adrian from the Pageant Project with you, and my special guest for today is Renata Grandao, who is over in Perth, Western Australia. She is the director of Premier Elite Pageants and the founder of Renata Grandao. I almost got through it. Grandao Communications. Renata, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. How are things going over in Perth? Are you relatively COVID free? I don't know if you heard the news, but Melbourne has just gone into another lockdown. How are you guys?
I heard the news. Apparently, we have 7 people who have been in some of the hotspots over in Melbourne, here in Perth. And the WA Premier has just shut the borders, which I think is probably a good thing. We've been pretty COVID free here. It's really cold at the moment, so I'm just recovering from a cold. So sorry for my nasally voice.
How cold is Perth? Because cold in Perth versus cold in Melbourne versus cold in Sydney versus cold on the Gold Coast. Completely different things. What's cold for you guys?
I think it's about 20 degrees here today and I'm freezing. So
You're like me. Anything under 20 degrees and I start complaining that, it's ferociously cold and that God has just made a horrible, horrible mistake.
Oh. yeah. Not
I
ideal.
do love Perth though.
Yeah.
Perth, I've been over there. I can't remember if it's once or twice, but when that banner in the background, that was my first book. I recorded a lot of the videos. 6 of the 10 interviews I recorded in one day in Perth,
Wow.
and it's it's got a really relaxed vibe. Like it feels really nice. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'd go there for lots of things to happen. Like if you're someone who wants a lot of things happening, like Sydney or Melbourne, I love Perth, but it's just like Sydney and Melbourne has probably more going on.
Yeah.
How long have you been Perth side for?
I've been living in Perth for about 7 years now. Prior to that, I was living in New Zealand, so it was definitely a big change coming from New Zealand to Perth. And surprisingly, in New Zealand, there was like a lot more. I lived in Auckland, so there was a lot going on all the time. Here in Perth, like you say, it's a bit more relaxed, so there's not as much going on, but I kind of like it like that.
I was going to say if you're moving, because I've been to New Zealand as well, although I was South Island with Queenstown. Very, very relaxing. So I was
Yeah.
just thinking Perth would be the perfect place to go because it's also very, very relaxing. Whereabouts in Perth are you? Are you right in the middle of the city, or are you one of the outer suburbs?
I'm in Mirawa, which is about 40 minutes from the city up north. So people are always like, "Oh, Mirawa, that's like far, far, far away."
I have
It's
no idea how far away it is.
Yeah, it's about 40 minutes from the city. It's a really beachy suburb, which I love. Me and my partner are bit beach bums, so that's why we chose to buy up here.
It sounds perfect. Sounds very, very relaxing.
Yeah.
Now, Renata, we're going to talk all things social media, obviously, but before that, you're also director of Premier Elite Pageants. So do you want to tell the people watching your pageant history, how you got involved in pageantry to begin with, and then also what led you to start your own system?
Yeah, definitely. So I did my very first pageant when I was 3 years old in South Africa. So that's where I was born. My mum entered me into one, and I did it, and I won that one, and I loved it. But then we moved to New Zealand a year later, so there wasn't really anything like that in New Zealand at the time. When I was about 13 years old, I competed as a national finalist for Teen Miss New Zealand. And that was really fun. I didn't place in that one, but at the time I actually had an eating disorder, and I was in a very sort of negative mind space, and it probably wasn't a great idea for me to be competing. But I sort of had already signed up, and I put myself in that position, and I was very much like comparing myself to the other girls, and it wasn't ideal. So then I sort of recovered, and when I moved to Perth, I was about 16 at the time. And Courtney Tester was actually at Mandari Senior College with me. So she's previous Miss Teen Galaxy and current Miss Intercontinental. So, which is so awesome for her. And we got on really well. And she was sort of introduced me into the Galaxy system. And I did a couple of Galaxy pageants, and I went through to nationals, and I loved it. I came in the top 10. And that was awesome. Such a great experience. And I learned so much from all the different girls and sort of that independence that you get from going over there and experiencing something like that when you're so young. So I actually traveled over solo without my family, but it was a really awesome experience. And then I did Miss Charity over in Perth, and I won that pageant, and that was great. But that was sort of quite a small pageant at the time. So I sort of decided, after speaking to Emma, who's that director, we thought, why not create like a more of a sisterhood in Perth and bring pageants, get them sort of going, because there's nothing really in Perth that's going on like that. So I decided to bring Premier Elite Pageants, which focuses on body positivity and sort of setting a positive experience for all the girls who compete. And originally it was just for the Miss and Ms categories, but last year we decided to bring in the younger girls as well, which was really awesome. And sort of, it's about everyone becoming a role model and using their skills to create a positive impact on our world.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
When were you competing in Galaxy? What years was this?
It would have been in, I want to say 2016 from
Okay,
memory.
all right. So you
It
probably know Alicia then as well, Alicia van Schoonhoven.
Schoonhoven, yeah. We've been at same events and we competed together. And also at Miss Global, I did compete 1 year with her.
Right. Okay. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but that's her in the background there because I
Yes.
featured
Awesome, yeah.
her in the book. She was the ambassador for that project. You said you were born in South Africa. Did you see the most recent universe with the South African contestant Natasha?
I haven't caught up with it yet. I just haven't had the time. But I did see that she didn't place, and people were quite upset about that.
Yeah, it's if you have a look, it's on my Instagram. I made a little reel of it. I put up her preliminary swimsuit walk and also her evening gown, which she's also a fashion designer. And there
Yeah.
was a whole lot of people going, "Can't believe she didn't make top 20, top 21." Yeah,
Yeah.
but South Africa has quite a strong. It's weird. Like I've interviewed a couple of South African queens, and I have one. I'm friends with a couple, good friends with a couple of them, and they tell me that pageantry is not big in South Africa, but South Africa seems to do really well on the international stage. I don't know
Definitely.
where that comes from.
I think that pageants aren't huge over there per se, but they do a lot of modeling. Like my auntie
Mm.
did a lot of modeling in the community growing up, and there was my family's Portuguese, so like in the Portuguese clubs and things, they used to have like their own little mini pageants, I guess. Yeah, so I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. You have to clarify for me because in the brief history that you've been talking about, we've heard South Africa, Portuguese, New Zealand, Perth. You're all over the place. What's happening there?
So I was born in South Africa, moved to New Zealand when I was 4, lived in New Zealand for 13 years, and then moved to Perth 7 years ago. But my family is originally from Portugal.
Right. Okay. Because
Yeah.
Galaxy Pageants internationally is also very strong in Portugal. So
Oh,
it's
really?
interesting. Yeah, the Portuguese Galaxy system. To give you an idea, the UK Galaxy system is probably the biggest. The
Uh-huh.
Australian one is up there as well in terms. It's probably the second biggest, and then
Yeah.
I think Portugal is just behind. Actually, I think Portugal might even be bigger than Australia this year. I think
Oh,
someone told me it's going to be like 40 girls or something
amazing.
like that. So it's
Uh-huh.
properly huge.
Yeah.
How long have you been running Premier Elite pageants for?
It's been 3 years now.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what are the goals that you have for it?
Well, it's really about creating a sisterhood of like-minded girls. I just find that there's such a bad connotation with pageantry, like in the media and things like that. People tend to think, oh, to be a pageant girl, you have to be a specific kind of girl, look a certain way, talk a certain way. But I kind of really want to break that and involve more people and sort of celebrate the fact that it really brings people together and helps people make a positive impact in our world. So for me, with pageant, if I'd never done pageantry, I would have never gotten involved in like fundraising and working in the community and that kind of thing. And that's really something that I want to be able to pass on to the next generation of girls.
And do you
Yeah.
have any more plans to compete yourself, or are we talking about now that you've got the directorship that and your business, which we'll get to in a second, that's keeping you more than busy enough?
Yeah, yeah. I do hope to compete again sometime soon. I'm just waiting to, with all COVID and things, I'm kind of nervous about
Mm.
signing up to a pageant and then not being able to go ahead and compete. And my fiance and I are getting married next year, so things are a bit crazy around that as well. So yeah.
Did you have to push back your wedding at all? Because the wedding industry has been trashed horribly by COVID.
Luckily not. Fingers crossed we don't have to. He proposed at the last Premier Elite event in January. So we've only been, engaged for a couple of months, but we're looking at October next year for the wedding. So yeah.
I hope you're not planning it overseas, are you?
Oh, no way, no way.
Okay.
We're fine.
I was going to say that's very, very brave of you if you're planning that overseas. Where are you planning a honeymoon though?
Yeah, so we actually went yesterday to Flight Centre to have a chat, but with everything, we're kind of nervous to book something, so we're probably
Yeah.
we were thinking about Coco's Island, but we probably might just end up going to Broome. So sort of
Okay.
NWA, not too far, yeah.
Yeah, it's a horrible time to be planning a pageant or planning a wedding or trying to do anything like that. Because as we've just seen with Melbourne, like literally, well, not literally overnight, but very quickly, you can't
Yeah,
go anywhere. 7-day lockdown. So how you can run a pageant or plan a wedding around that, I have no idea. I am glad to hear you're able to go to a flight center because a lot of the flight centers closed because
I know.
obviously in 2020 there's literally no business. So I'm glad to hear there's at least a couple of them still around.
Yeah.
That might be a good time to actually segue into your social media business. Talking
Yeah.
about business, so tell us what I don't know if it's your how you would call it day job, like which one which you got the pageants and you got the social media. Which one's your day job and which one is sort of your superhero, after hours alter ego? But in terms of social media,
Yeah.
tell us how you got started in the social media business.
Well, I'd like to think that my social media sort of business is my bread and butter. Um,
Mhm.
and my pageant side of things is like my passion project. So I actually, when I was in high school, I did a lot of writing and I love to write. And when it came to the time to sort of decide what I wanted to do after high school, I thought, oh, I really want to be an author. And my family were like, that's a bit risky being an author. You can't say that's your full-time job. And I was like, oh, so what can I do that, fits in with writing and things that I love doing, but will actually generate an income? So that's when I looked into doing journalism. And so I went ahead and I studied at Curtin University. I did mass communications. So I majored in journalism and corporate screen production. And I found out early on that journalism wasn't my calling, but I wanted to push through and stick it out because I was like, I can do it, 3 years. So I did.
Yeah.
And then after I had my degree, I actually went into working in marketing because I'd done a couple of marketing units at uni. And I worked at a skincare business. And I just thought, oh, this isn't really for me. Like, I'm not the type of 9 to 5 kind of gal. Like, I like to have flexibility. I like to be able to go out and meet people. And, if I have something on, I like to, fit my schedule around what I'm doing. So I started taking up, it was actually my auntie saw a post go up on Facebook for a social media manager for an academy of gymnastics just in Perth. And I applied to it and I was like, oh, let's see what happens. They were looking for someone freelance. And at the time I hadn't even thought about, working for myself. So I went ahead, did the interview with them, and they're like, amazing, you've got the gig. What are your freelance details, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've not even thought about it yet. So I went home and I started, writing, all my price lists and my T's and C's and, service agreements and that kind of thing. And I was working with them on the side because I was only working 3 days a week at the skincare business. And it got to the point where I had about 7 clients freelance because they started recommending me to other people. and I was like, well, I need to make a decision. Either I bite the bullet and go full-time freelance and just, go for it and see what happens, or I stay stuck in this job and working like a side hustle, which was becoming really overwhelming for me. Um,
Mhm.
and at the time, I was actually reading this book, The Power of Now. And one night I was sitting in bed reading the book, and I read something about how like now is the only time that you've got, and if you don't make that decision, you might lose that opportunity. So the next day, I called up my boss and I said, "Hey, I'm resigning," and she was like, "What? You can't resign!" But anyway, I did, and I went full time freelance in July 2 years ago now.
That's been quite a ride then. I
Yeah.
find that with entrepreneurial people with
Mhm.
entrepreneurialism in the blood, that whole there's some reason that they just can't work 9 to 5.
Mm-mm.
I tried it once as my
Yeah.
very first job.
Uh-huh.
It didn't end well. Because the corporate hierarchy very much is okay. So you got your degree, you start at the bottom, you have to work your way up, but it's very political as well. That's what I found. You have to, if you are very bright, very intelligent, and very enthusiastic, and you come in and you're hot, you're young, you still have to make way for the older, tired people who are there above you simply because they've been working there for 20, 30 years and they're waiting for their retirement check. That's
Exactly.
what I found anyway. So did you have that sort? I mean, I'm going to guess that you did because you did journalism, which is not a typical 9 to 5 job anyway. But
Yeah.
have you always been like that as well? I'm curious.
Um, I've always been the type of person who wants to be heard and wants to make an impact. So really working in like an office setting wasn't for me, just because I had so many opinions on things, and I was like, we could try this and we could try that. And people were like, no, this
Mm,
is not what we've been doing. We've been doing this for the past 10 years and we're going to keep doing it.
mm.
So that's, that's where I really struggled to sort of fit into that office environment.
That is literally what you just worded is probably one of my biggest pet peeves is when people just it really is. It's when people justify doing something simply because that's the way it's always been done. And I
Exactly.
think in 2020, if you weren't flexible, you weren't able to pivot. Like some of the big businesses, they do make a lot of money, but it's so slow to turn around. It's like the Titanic.
Yeah.
So a small business like yourself or like myself, when COVID shuts everything down, we can pivot on the spot. I mean, we don't like it, but we can go, okay, we'll do more stuff online. Whereas if you're a giant corporation, you literally can't turn yourself around, and then you, like the Titanic, you plow straight into the iceberg.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so, in terms of what a typical day looks like, because I know a lot of pageant girls, when they think of starting their own business, a lot of them are interested in social media management. I don't know if it's a social media agency, that's slightly different, but they're certainly very keen on helping people create content and
Mhm.
then publishing it and then managing their accounts. So, what
Yeah.
does a typical day for you look like as a social media manager?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it took a really long time to sort of figure out what my typical day and week sort of looked like. So I had to create myself a schedule to really get into that flow, I guess. Because originally I was working every day, weekends included,
Mm,
and it was just too much. So I figured out what works for me. So basically, Thursday and Friday, I create content for all my clients. So right now I have 20 clients. So I create all their everyone's on a different package. So some people have, like 2 things going out per week. Other people have content going out every day. It just depends. So yeah, Thursday, Friday, I create the content and send through their content plans. Then Monday, I schedule. So I bulk schedule everyone's content. And then that way I have Tuesday, Wednesday for meetings, and like to interact on their socials and sort of any other bits and bobs. So I also do copyright and create websites. So that's
mhm.
what I sort of do on the Wednesday. Sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday. Trying to make sense in my head.
It sounds like you've got a good schedule there. In terms of, I mean, let's dive into this. In terms of how you schedule and how you set that up. So there's a pageant girl who wants to start managing, let's say, a small business's social media. Obviously, you've got to get access details to their account. You have to have some sort of software to schedule, unless you're just going to post every time that you want to put a post up. But I would strongly suggest schedule batching and scheduling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
batching what you said on the Thursday and Friday. So doing the content creation in a concentrated period rather than doing it, whenever you feel like you need to.
Yeah,
So in
definitely.
terms of batching and scheduling, what tips, what tricks, what softwares do you use for those?
So basically, what I really like to do is I create a monthly content calendar for each of my clients. So I sort of cover any important events that are happening both in the community and their business, and then any sort of special days. So things like, you know, Daffodil Day or
Mhm.
Easter and that kind of thing. So I put that into their content calendar, and then I create um, weekly graphics for them to have a look at, and then they go through that and they just confirm that they're happy with that, and then I schedule that on the Monday when I'm doing all my scheduling.
Right. And what software do you use to schedule?
I just use Facebook Creator Studio.
Mhm.
Originally, I was using like a special software, and I found that there were so many glitches and posts weren't going out and things like that, and that made me really stressed. So I just thought, what's the simplest way of doing it? And someone recommended Creator Studio, and I've been using it for about a year now, and I love it. I highly recommend it, and it's free, which is great.
Yeah, sure. It's because it's actually produced by Facebook. Do you use
Yeah,
it on mobile just out of interest, or do you use it on your desktop/laptop?
I use it desktop.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I found that with the mobile version, and I have this discussion with my best friend all the time. For
yeah,
some reason, that the app version, it seems very, very delayed sometimes. Like you'll get a notification about something that happened a day ago. I still think there's a glitch in it where when someone mentions my page and I click on it, it doesn't actually show me who shared or commented. So I do like it on desktop, but on
mhm,
on mobile, I found it very, very. Let's just say I'm not the biggest fan of it.
yeah,
But in terms of because you said you got 20 clients, am I correct? It was 20, wasn't it?
yeah,
Which is
20.
amazing. First off, so congratulations on that.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
when they bring you on, what
Uh-huh.
is it that they bring you on for? Like, what's the result? Because I'm sure that, okay, maybe they don't have time to do social, or maybe they're just one of those people who doesn't like social. Maybe they're a bit older, they want someone else to take care of it. But in terms of the result that they want, let's say from you managing the social, what is the result that you talk to them about? Is it building engagement? Is it building the following? Is it actually getting sales? If they're a sales business, what's a discussion that you have there with your clients?
Yeah, so it's mostly about creating a brand awareness and a community. So, you could have, I don't know, 10,000 followers and only 20 people like your post and no one comments on it. But you could
Mm,
have, 100 followers and, 20 of those people are commenting and 80 are liking, which is way more
yeah,
valuable than having all the
yeah,
followers. So that's the kind of conversation that I have with people. And generally, the people who end up working with me, that's what they're after. I
right.
don't
And do you?
Sorry.
No,
I
sorry, you go. I cut you off.
don't like to give people the false hope that they're going to make sales through social media, because I think that if you are saying that, you're really setting yourself up to fail because there's no really proven way of tracking that and being sure that that's going to happen.
I think it can be very difficult to manage as well from your position, because if your social media simply becomes buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, that's not typically what most people go to social media for. We go there for entertainment or distraction or something like that. So saying buy my stuff um, probably isn't the smartest strategy. So when you do you reach out to your clients, or do they reach out to you, or is it a bit of both?
Initially, when I started working for myself, I had, like I said, the Academy of Gymnastics as my first client, and they referred me to a couple of people, and also mentioned me on Facebook, like
Yeah,
groups and things like someone's looking for a social media manager. They're like, contact Renata. So most people, they end up coming to me. I don't think I've ever really reached out to someone and been like, hey, can I work with you? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so then the question now is social media and pageantry. In
Uh-huh.
terms of pageant girls, because they always want to build their following, which, as you already said, it's not just about how big your following is, it's about engagement. And frankly, I wish that more girls would focus on that and building
Yeah.
a community that's really engaged with what they're doing rather than just trying to get 100, 200,000 followers. But
Yeah.
what are some of the tips or even some of the frustrations you have? Let's see, because obviously you've got a foot in both industries.
Uh-huh.
If there's a young girl watching this and they want to build their social following, what tips, what tricks, what strategies would you give them?
I would definitely recommend, I know people always say it, but being authentic and being, I guess, vulnerable and just, letting people know exactly who you are. Just because you're posting photos in a bikini doesn't mean that people are gonna, relate to that. People want to follow people who they can relate to. That's really what it is at the end of the day. I also always tell people that people buy your story. So it's all well and good to have like this really nice aesthetic feed, but if you're not telling people about who you are and what you do, you're not going to get anywhere because people really want to be able to resonate with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one that I see a lot of in pageantry is the bikini photo, or even let's say a sparkly gown photo.
Yeah.
And then the caption is kind of, it might be two lines from a pop song or something like that. Like the
Yeah.
caption is it could be sassy, but it's kind of very throwaway. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't really ever make you think. In terms
Yeah.
of the captions, what sort of captions? Because I completely agree with you. I mean, in terms of stories sell, facts tell.
Yeah.
So I always think you should be telling your story, especially when you're advocating or a platform. But in terms of the captions, what
Mhm.
what would you advise the girls to be putting in their captions?
Okay, so not quotes and not song lyrics, unless they resonate with you and you're going to sort of say why they
Yeah.
resonate with you, then that's fine. I do think that if you're not adding value in your captions, there's not really any point in posting. So 50% of what you're posting is your image, and the other 50%
Hmm.
is the caption. So you need to
I
really
just
tailor.
I like that you said that because I think the same thing all the time. It's like I look at all these photos because understand that I follow almost exclusively pageant girls.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I see a lot of what you guys are posting out, and like the bikini looks really nice. You look great. The dress looks amazing. But after a certain number of exposures, you just
Yeah,
start looking like everyone else. And I keep
yeah.
telling people, like from a marketing perspective, if nothing else, and I think it's common sense. I don't know if you agree with this, but if you look like everyone else, you're not going to get noticed because everyone is putting up those photos. So, would you say you agree with that, or you disagree with that, or you somewhere
No,
in the
yeah,
middle?
I 100% agree. I mean, even in the industry that I'm in, like doing the social media marketing, I have a friend who's a graphic designer and would constantly go on and like always have like this little every time we catch up, we go on a rant about it because even these social media managers are posting photos in bikinis and then like talking about yeah, right, and they're talking about how important it is to love yourself and not worry about the amount of followers that you have. And I'm like, it's really contradicting that you're posting this photo which you're trying to gain followers from, and then talking about, oh, followers don't really matter. So, we always
Yep.
have this little chat.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it gets to the point. I know some girls. I'll put up a photo, and if it doesn't have a certain number of likes or comments within a certain amount of time, they'll actually delete it
Yeah.
because they want to build the perfect feed where every little square, at least on Instagram, has a certain number of followers, a certain number of likes, because then it gives them bragging rights to say, "Look at me! Look how many people are engaging with me." Um,
Yeah.
in terms of that, I mean, I'm assuming that you don't do that, but where do you think that stems from? Why is there this need to like put up a post and if it's not performing within like an hour, I'm going to delete it?
Honestly, I think a lot of it comes from like, I know it sounds cliche and all, but like, you see celebrities or like people of influence and that kind of thing, they put up a post and within seconds they have, thousands, hundreds of thousands of likes. And I feel like a lot of people try to compare themselves to that. And I know personally a few people who um, they try to show off a life because essentially social media is your highlight reel, right? You're not
Yeah.
posting, the day that your dog broke its leg and you're really upset. You're not going to post that. Probably not anyway. So yeah, it's really about like that whole comparison thing and people wanting to be better than everybody else. That's what I bring it down to.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree with that. And I think a dose of perfectionism as well. Um, okay, so in terms of um, let's just brainstorm. I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. But let's say you were to take on a pageant queen's social media. I don't know if that ever happens, but let's say a pageant queen was to take you on and they want you to help build their brand, build engagement. We've already talked about the bikini photo and the dress photo, and they obviously have a place.
Yeah.
Outside of those stock standard photos or your latest pageant headshot, there's so many cliches that I could talk about that drive me mad. It's like, oh, please stop posting that every single time. But if they want it to be a bit different, because it's
Mhm.
all well and good for me to say be different, but then they go, well, what do you want me to post? What are some of the different ideas, some of the different things I could play with to try and stand out a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So I think something that's really important for everybody is to create a brand image for themselves. So I've spoken about this before to previous pageant queens and things about how when you are in the pageant industry, essentially you are a public figure. So you need to be
Mm,
a bit like, not careful, but conscious of what you post. And also you want to, educate people about why you're doing what you're doing, why you're involved in pageants, how they've sort of helped you in your life, how you become the person you are today because of them. So it's really about education and adding value and telling your story.
right.
So
Would you have any? Yeah, so I was just sort of like tips in terms of the creative. So the captions, you can obviously tell your story, but I know a lot of pageant girls will struggle if you say, okay, you're not allowed to post a bikini photo, a gown photo, or a headshot photo for the next month. They'll be going, well, I have nothing else to post. The next thing they'll
yeah,
post up is an inspirational quote made on
exactly.
Canva, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
No hate
Um,
on Canva. Canva's actually an Australian company, but
come on. I love Canva.
I love
I
Canva too, but I don't know if you get to the point where you see the girls putting up quotes and you go, that's a Canva template. Because literally
yeah,
I've seen it. I'm still like,
that's
oh, that's the template you use. So I'm just like, create it
yeah.
you anyway. But
Canva,
what
don't use the templates.
but in terms of the creative, what would you say the girls could post apart from all the stock standard stuff?
So I really love feeds that actually show everyday life. So things that you're doing, you can still make everyday life look aesthetic and pretty. Like I personally love seeing people's family, their friends, things that they most care about. So surely not the only thing that they care about is pageants. Like there has to be something else,
Yeah.
Yeah, and we want to see that.
Right. So it's more behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that happens away from the stage or away from pageantry to help
Yeah,
actually flesh you out as a real person.
definitely. Definitely. So, like say you've gone and got your pageant gown, like you could do a photo about collecting your pageant gown and give the business a shout out and, say what you loved most about working with them to get the perfect gown for you. Yeah.
Okay.
But
In terms of Instagram feeds, right?
yeah.
I have a couple of friends, and probably I know a lot of people who are obsessive about the feeds. On Instagram in particular, with the three squares across and then scrolling down, and they want. And I used to do this, and I stopped because I just was like, "This is stupid." But I don't know. Maybe for a pageant girl, it's different. But it's like quote photo, quote photo, quote
Yeah.
photo, or they put up three at a time because you want it to be threes, threes, threes.
Yeah.
Or this one's got to be pink, then it's got to be blue, then it's got to be pink, then it's got to be blue. And I just like, I don't know how you ever post anything when you have this many restrictions on you. And I say that with all respect because I had a friend over here, and in the space of time that I had created like 20 posts and God knows how much content, I turned back to her and said, "What are you doing?" And said, "Oh, I'm still doing my post." And I'm like,
No.
"It's
Still?
been 3 hours." Yeah, no, but it's been 3 hours. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get the caption right. I'm like, what? What's the conversation there? Because I know, look, I've seen really, really pretty feet. I have. They're much prettier than mine. But at the end of the day, my thought process goes, I don't know how much time that cost you to create that. And also, I'm not actually sure anyone's as interested in that as you are. Like you want the pretty feed, but someone
Yeah.
coming to look at it, they're more interested in what you have in the profile, frankly, than how amazingly pretty your feed is.
Yeah.
What's a conversation you would have there on that topic?
So for me, I am one of those people who has like the two photos and then a graphic. But that's just
Yeah.
what I like that. I'm a perfectionist. Yeah, I definitely am. I'm a Virgo, so I know a lot of other Virgos are exactly the same. But I do think that when you are using a platform like Instagram, it is very much a visual platform. So there is some element of aesthetic that goes into it. So like I
Of
said
course.
before, yeah, so branding is really important. So for example, say your theme is pink, like try and use photos that have like a sort of a pink hue to it or pink tones, that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that you have to restrict yourself from having a random photo every now and then that doesn't fit in with that feed, you know? I used to be really pedantic about it too. And a while ago, it was all, keeping it all the same. And I use a lot of stock images. And then I got to
Mm,
the point where people were like, hey, we want to know what's going on in your life, like actually going on, and
yeah.
that's something that even a lot of my clients wanted. They wanted to know, what do I do on the weekends? How was that party that I was organizing? That kind of thing. So I sort of become more lenient, and you'll see now that I have like quite a mixture of different aesthetics and colors and things going on. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it because I think it makes it a bit easier for you.
Yeah,
But I mean,
totally.
in terms of, I mean, you're exactly dead on the money when you say that people want to know who you are, right? Because as you said, it's highlight reel, but people get sick of it and they want to know who you really are and little things about you.
Yeah.
So, I can spend as much time as I want trying to create the perfect post. And then what I very often find is that my best performing posts, and it's not like it does twice as well, it could do 100 times as well sometimes. They're very often the posts where I put up a completely silly photo. It's like deliberately silly,
Yeah.
or at least very casual, not posed at all. And then the content is either something that's maybe slightly controversial, or it's just something like I put up a post, the one that's pinned on my Facebook page at the moment is like 7 random facts about me, or like my top pet peeves. And I didn't think anyone was going to be interested in that because I was just like, oh, I hate this, I hate this, I hate, because I was just in that sort of a mood. And the number of people who liked that and commented on it saying, love it, this is amazing. And I'm like, it's just my pet peeves. But my point is that sometimes we create content, and I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes I think we fall into the trap of creating content for ourselves
Mhm.
versus making the content that our audience wants. Have
Yeah.
you ever found that to be the case?
Yeah, yeah. I found that with like even starting working with new clients, people tend to think, oh, on my social media, all I'm going to post is like the work that I've done. And like, for
Mm,
example, hairdressing, right? And that's great and all, but people want to like have education and they want content that, they can relate with as well. So the second you put up like a meme or something, people are going to interact with that. It's because
mm,
people can relate to that. People, see
yeah,
this beautiful hair transformation, but once the feed is clogged with that, it just gets, it's basic. No one really cares.
yeah, that's very,
Yeah.
very true. Um, okay, so the profile, the bio, the bit above all the beautiful photos. What's your advice, tips for what to put in there?
Yeah. So definitely where you're located is super important. And then just like a brief bio about yourself. Don't say, probably the worst thing is when people are like full-time, I don't know, full-time student, part-time lover of life. Like that's so generic.
Mhm.
Actually create something that means something to you. So you see for mine, it's just hello, welcome to, hiya, welcome to my world. I'm a really casual kind of person. I would say I've got a pretty big personality, so the hiya is like my little quirky thing. And then I just says like, what I do, and the welcome to my world sort of also shows that it's not just all business. Like I do show off some
Yeah,
other things as well. Yeah.
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 Okay. Now, in terms of, let's talk about the link, and this will apply to TikTok and Instagram. But assuming that you don't have 10K and you can just, use that swipe up feature on Instagram, um, what would you put in the link? Because there's only space for one link on Instagram or TikTok bio. So what would you put there if you're a pageant queen, let's say?
Yeah. So I actually use Linktree, which is really great. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it
Yeah.
allows you to put I think up to 5 different links on there. So that's what I use. If you weren't using that, I would recommend having a website and sending all your traffic to that platform.
Mhm.
I find that it's a lot easier to answer queries and things if it's all directed to the one link as opposed to tons of different ones.
Yeah, and Linktree, you can get a basic version for free, I believe, if that's still the case.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am a. I've gone back and forth on the Linktree thing. It's like, oh, I have so many things I want to tell people. Let's use a Linktree, but at the same time, as soon as you give people too many options, it's like they just don't click on anything. So
exactly.
sometimes I like the simplicity of just this is the one link and you can't go anywhere else. You mentioned web design. Okay, so what should people do when they design a website? I've designed website for people. Um, there are some people who should never be allowed to design a website because they know nothing about tech. They know nothing about tech, and some of them are such perfectionists that they will never ever release it. Then there's other
Yeah,
people who get overwhelmed, like you need to buy a domain, you need to do what, where
yeah.
it's being hosted, where I need to pay for the hosting. So someone goes, yes, okay. Renata says I should have a website. I agree.
Uh-huh.
How would you go about getting one?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say, fun fact: 56% of people will only buy from a Instagram profile who has a website. So if you don't have a website, then you're already missing out. So that's just a fun fact I remembered. But with websites, you want to make sure that they're clean, they're easy to access, and when you're creating a website, you really have to think about the user. So you might want to have. I had this one client who came to me and had so much information, and the information was great, but as a consumer, I was going on the website to find out where can I buy the product. I don't necessarily care about the 20 years experience they've had and where they've worked and all that sort of thing. I just want to know where I can get the product from. So definitely keeping that in mind when you're creating a website. You don't have to put all the information in there.
It's really interesting you mentioned that because one of the people I follow, he's doing what would you call it, like evaluations, or like people are asking him to rate their bio. So he goes onto their bio. This is on TikTok, and he'll go through it, and every single one of them, it's what you just said. It's like the website's like, I don't know where I can go to give you money. Like,
Yeah.
where can I go to give you money? I want your stuff, but you've hidden it somewhere. It's like
Yeah.
people going, I'm not getting enough money. It's like, I've gone to your website. Where can I give you money? So keep it clean. Don't put too much information. Really clear, we'll call them calls to action, right? So buying something is a call to action. Obviously, we want to be mobile optimized. There's nothing quite like a site that looks great on desktop and doesn't look great on mobile, because now most people actually do. They visit, it's more than 50% now, I believe, visit on mobile versus. So what we used to do is design on a desktop, and I've got two screens. So it's really great to make things look great on two screens, and then you go on your mobile and you can't see anything. Yeah, so which are called mobile responsive, for those of you who don't know, that's what that means. In terms of call to action, so let's say a pageant queen may not have necessarily a product for sale, but they still want to start a website. What do you think the main focus should be for a pageant queen who doesn't have a product for sale, but has a website? Should it be their story? Should it be their advocacy? Something different?
I think it could be a combination of things. It could really be like a platform that sort of tracks their journey. So without, like bombarding people, but you can even use things like videos and photos to sort of make it a more visual platform. But definitely, telling their story, what they're advocating for and why they're advocating for it. And yeah, like tracking their journey to whatever pageant that they're competing in.
Okay. Now, there are a lot of social platforms out there. And then everyone has their favorite one.
Yeah.
And then sometimes social platforms can disappear overnight. Or as you mentioned, like your account could disappear overnight. I still can't believe that. It's why you should have your own website and your own email list. But
100%.
there are so many platforms and not enough time. So when someone, and it could be a small business, may not be a pageant girl, but if a small business goes, I just can't, let's say you think it's a great idea for them to start a YouTube channel, but they just say, I can't do video. Or, TikTok's the next hottest thing. It's doing really well, but they're like, oh, I'm not going to do a dancing video. How do you have that conversation with a client and they're like, how many platforms should they be on? Because I think that's a really interesting question. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. Which
So
ones
many.
do we pick? Exactly.
Yeah, so I always ask people to think about who their demographic is, like who their target market is. So, for example, if you are a skincare company and you are, you're doing like fillers and that kind of thing, you probably don't really need to be on TikTok because that's really like the younger audience. It's where all the sort of teens are hanging out. You'd probably
Mm.
benefit more from being on Instagram and Facebook as opposed to TikTok. Whilst, for example, if you are, I don't know, a dancing school, you'd probably be better off having, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Because you've got to think about if you own a dancing school, you're targeting the kids, you're targeting the families, so
Yeah.
you want to, that's where the demographic sort of lies. So I always think TikTok is if you've got a really young target audience, and then Instagram is sort of like 15 plus, and then Facebook is sort of, mid 20s onwards kind of thing. So that's what I always try to get my
Old
clients to
people.
think. Yeah, old people. I'm included.
Facebook is for us old people.
For us geriatrics.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Who should use
Yeah.
Twitter? It's out of interest.
Honestly, I am not a fan of Twitter.
No?
No, I used to love Twitter back in high school. I was obsessed. Yeah, this is really embarrassing, but I was obsessed with Reese Maston because, like, do you even know him?
No.
Okay, Reese Maston.
Reese Maston.
Yeah, look him up. He was off the X Factor years ago. I think it was, I want to say 2015, but I could be wrong. And I was the biggest fangirl. So I had Twitter, and for that reason, I used to like stalk all the celebrities, but only local ones. And they would follow me back. Like that was my thing, right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, Johnny Rocco followed me. But honestly, I think unless you are like a big time celebrity or a big name, then there's really no point being on Twitter.
Okay.
That's just
So all the Twitter fans have now up and left. What about Vine or MySpace? Is MySpace still around? I don't even know.
I was thinking that the other day. I've recently been watching The Circle USA, and they were talking about MySpace, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I even went on MySpace. The very first social media platform that I ever used was Bebo.
Bebo.
Do you remember Bebo? You could like customize all the sparkly things and butterflies.
Yeah.
And
God, that was back in the day. Bebo is one of those things that you now have joke. It's a joke about the early 2000s sort of thing. You make Bebo jokes. That's how old it is. Is Bebo even still around?
I don't actually know. I'll have to look it up.
And TikTok used to be Musical.ly, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So in terms of pageantry, I'm going to say that Instagram is a must. I don't know any pageant girl who wouldn't have an Instagram. What are the other musts or nice to haves, let's say, as a pageant queen or a pageant competitor?
Yeah, I would say Facebook is great, especially like for me, if you have family overseas and that kind of thing, it's a great way to keep them informed on what's going on. I would also say TikTok is great if you have the time to create the videos and if you're creatively inclined like that. Personal favorite pageant queen who is a TikToker would be Rachel Everin. I don't really know anyone else who creates like as great TikToks as she does, who was a pageant queen. So there you go.
You know the story between Rach Everin and myself and TikTok?
What? Tell me.
back when TikTok was just beginning to break out really big, right? I had jumped on TikTok. I was one of the first sort of like, the older people or even a male jumping on TikTok. And I would post and it would get, 2,000 views. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I saw that Rach was on it. And I messaged her saying, why aren't you doing more with this? I think you'd really love it. Because I think she'd started before me, but then she stopped. And she goes, oh, yeah, but I'm too old for it. I'm like, Rachel, what are you talking about? You're what, I think it was 18 at the time. Like, you're not too old for it. Give it a go. And because blowing up for me, I think will blow well for you. Well, fast forward 18 months. She's now signed up with, I think it's IMG or someone as a TikToker, and she has hundreds of thousands of followers. And I often joke because whenever I send her a message or comment, and whenever she reaches like the next milestone, I say, I told you weren't too old. I was like, well, you're still too old now. Because it's worked out pretty well for her. So that's the story.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. She probably owes you some royalties.
Well, you know how it goes on social media with royalty. It's like I'll take 50% of zero. It's still going to be zero, but she's done super well. What
Yeah,
about in terms of just that level of discomfort? So, TikTok comes out and people go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be silly. I don't dance. But at the
yeah,
same time, like for businesses, you might feel like you're leaving money on the table because of TikTok in terms of organic reach, right? Not in terms of paid, which is a separate beast, but
yeah,
organic reach on Facebook pages or Instagram, it's not going up. I mean, Reels is an interesting thing, but it's not going up. But TikTok, although TikTok's also going down, but TikTok for a while was everything was going viral. So in terms
yeah.
of, let's say there's a small business and they want more exposure, but they're not willing to go on a platform because it makes them feel uncomfortable, but it'd be a good opportunity for them. What sort of conversations do you have with your clients when that they have that sort of an issue?
Yeah. So one of the things that my clients don't usually want to get involved in is like stories on Instagram. Even
Mm,
just showing their face, people are really weird about it. "Oh, I don't want to do that. People don't want to see me. I'm like this old woman and no one wants to know what I have to say. But people do, like it's the behind the scenes. And I always tell clients that they need to just take that risk and do it, and
mm.
sort of see how it pays off. And then from there, they really, they get that momentum going. Like if it goes really well, they're like, oh, this is amazing. Like I'm going to keep doing more of it. I actually had one client who had never done a story before. I encouraged her to do them, and she's been getting amazing feedback from them. And she's like, I'm never stopping. I'm going to keep going. So it's all about just, confronting that and just doing it and seeing what happens.
Okay, sorry, I just dropped out for a second and I only heard the back part of that story, which was it's going amazing. What is going amazing? What did you tell her to do? Because I want to know.
One of my clients, she was really, skeptical about doing Instagram stories, and I really encouraged
Right.
her to go ahead and do it, and she has, and it's been going great. And she's been getting amazing feedback from it and that kind of thing. So it's really, you just have to, what do they say? Look fear in the eye and do it anyway. Like just do it
Hmm.
and see what happens. Yeah,
I often feel like at the worst, like what's the worst that can happen? Because I
yeah,
think
exactly.
sometimes we get worried that someone's going to laugh at us or something like that, but no one is really looking at us when we're honest because everyone's busy looking at themselves. So really,
Exactly.
just give it a go.
Yeah,
What's the worst that can happen? You get a sale or you get 1,000 views. Um, I have noticed that Instagram Reels, at least for me, is
mhm.
doing very, very well in terms of organic reach. I put up a couple of the videos from Universe in terms of the walking. I think one of them got over 10,000 views, and I say that understanding that I only have 2,000 followers. So to
Yeah,
get 11,000 views, something is going very well. I put up a lot of pageant coaching stuff as well. That's been very well received, and then
mhm.
that sort of short form content can also obviously go on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, which apparently YouTube is making a big push with YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's Instagram stories, there's Facebook stories, although I can't remember the last time I looked at a Facebook story. Sorry, Facebook. Um, it's much easier on Instagram. I never look at a Facebook story. But in terms of the future direction of social, and there's only going to be more platforms coming out, right? Some will fall away, but there's only going to be more and more and more. What tips do you have for people to sort of make their content creation as efficient and effective as possible? And I say that because I will do long form content such as this or my
Mhm.
podcast, which I just record straight to my phone on the car. But then I take
Yeah,
clips out of that. I put them on Instagram Reels or TikTok. Obviously, I take the audio out and put it on podcast. So I'm trying to take, one big piece of content and use that to make the smaller pieces. Because for me, that's a lot less overwhelming than trying
yeah.
to create 20 separate little pieces of content where every single one needs to be a different idea. So,
Mhm.
what tips would you have for the girls watching just in terms of streamlining the content creation so it's not quite so overwhelming?
Yeah, yeah. So I always like to recycle content. So even if you have a post that's done really well that you posted, I don't know, a year ago, go back to that post and see how can you reuse that post, and maybe even like you said, like create more content out of it. So a really good one is, say you've written a blog post, like how can you use that blog post and then create, I don't know, 10 different pieces of content for the different platforms. So yeah, definitely recycling content is the most efficient way of creating it. If it's done, if it's broke, don't fix it. So yeah,
Absolutely. Um,
yeah,
can we just have a quick conversation on
uh-huh,
email lists? Because
uh-huh,
of what you just told me today about that Facebook page just being deleted overnight, basically. Um, this is, I think, a really important conversation, specifically for businesses. Maybe not so much pageant girls, although I think everyone would be well to do to have an email list. The big fear is that TikTok, you could be banned overnight. Instagram, it happens all the time. I don't know why they just decide you've done something and you're gone. Doesn't
yeah,
matter. You can't get it back. And so that
yeah,
following you've built over years, because it does take work, is gone. All your media is gone, all the conversation's gone. But an email list and your website are the two things that you can keep.
yeah.
So when it comes to small businesses, maybe not necessarily pageant girls, what's
Mhm.
the conversation around having your website, building the email list as your asset, the big asset?
Yeah. I think it's so important. It's really invaluable because, like you said, Instagram goes down, Facebook goes down. If those are your only ways of, staying in touch with your clients,
Mm,
having access to testimonials, having access to your media and all that sort of thing, well, if it disappears, you've got nothing to fall back on. So
mm,
whenever a new business starts up, I always say, like, get your website up and running. Even if it's simple, even if it's just a landing page, at least you've got that for the time being. And always create email lists. So with Premier Elite Pageants, what I do, the second is anyone sends me through an inquiry and they've ticked the little, yes to subscribe box, I
yep.
straight away, fill everything in so that they're there and I cannot lose that contact. And also really important to remember to back things up. So, download the files, like all the contacts and, actually have them on a hard drive or something just because, one guy who I'm in a networking group always says, what if your laptop catches fire? Or what if, someone steals something? How are you going to
Mm.
access all that information? So just backups are super important.
Yeah, I have backups running over here. I've started putting more and more stuff in the cloud as cloud storage has become more affordable. Obviously, being hacked is a possibility, but
Yeah,
they obviously take care of all the backups themselves. And I I don't know what I would do without that facility because it's so much easier now than it was even 10 years ago trying to keep your data everywhere.
yeah,
You mentioned Premier League pageants, and I think that's an interesting conversation. So just briefly, what conversation could we have for directors and using social media and their website to build their business? Because a lot of pageants, the numbers are going the wrong way. They're going down, not up.
yeah,
And this is a higher level discussion, but I feel that leads some directors to make really poor decisions because the number of entries is how much money they get. If the money isn't coming in, they have to look for other ways of bringing the money in. And sometimes they do it in ways that I don't really agree with. It's not that it's illegal, it's just I don't agree with it. Um,
yeah.
how could a director build up her pageant as a genuine business?
Yeah, yeah. So I really think it's important that you have, again, going back to the target market. So each pageant is obviously very different and who they're
Mm,
sort of trying to target, So with Premier Elite, we're a bit of a smaller pageant. We have a lot of girls from like the dancing community who we work with and a lot of local WA contestants. So it's really important about, to create a relationship with them and to, you know, sometimes I see like really negative things on social media about pageants, and sometimes that even can be posted by directors. And I think it's so
mm,
important to try and keep it positive. And not everything needs to be aired out on social media. Like some things you can keep to yourself, even if it's upset you. That's okay. Like deal with it in your own time. You don't need to put it on socials. And I think that's important for both, anyone working in the pageant industry, like directors and all that sort of thing, as well as contestants, like to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I know you haven't been keeping up to date with Universe, but if you want an example of how not to handle your problems, just look up Miss Nova Stevens, who's Miss Canada, Miss Universe Canada, and the giant argument that's blown up between her management team and Michael
Oh,
Cinco, the designer who designed her gown. They're having a massive stoush on internet. Nova's stuck in the middle,
oh,
and she's getting death threats from Filipino pageant fans. Literally,
wow.
like random people messaging her. She put up a screenshot saying, Nova, die. Nova, commit suicide. It's
Oh my God.
absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, social
I think
media. Yeah.
while social media is a great thing, like you definitely have to always be switched on when you're using it. And that's something that I get really nervous about is, seeing a lot of younger contestants and, even
Mm,
family members like cousins and things, seeing them on social media and things like TikTok and Instagram. And they don't really understand the gravity of, what they have in front of them. It can
mm.
be a really dangerous tool as well as a positive, positive thing. So yeah, it's kind of scary in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, I'm not going to ask your age, but I will guess you're similar to myself in that you can actually remember a time when there wasn't social, and now we're living in a world where social is everywhere. Whereas you got to
Yeah,
remember that some of these young girls, they've never been in a world without social media. Like
it's
it's
crazy.
always been around, and
Yeah.
it's only going to be a matter of time, I think, before we get chips in our head and we see social media on our eyeballs and on our hands. And I don't know how far you're willing to go. Elon Musk has already developed a chip that allows, certain things in the
Oh,
brain and communication through brain waves.
I've heard
So
that.
it's coming.
I know. It
It's
kind of
coming.
terrifies me.
I think, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious to see how far it goes, but yeah, I'd probably be one of the guinea pigs. I always want to be on the cutting edge of technology. Um, just before we get to the end, let me just ask you a few rapid fire questions. Okay, so favorite social platform.
Instagram.
Okay, least favorite social platform.
TikTok.
Ouch. Okay, okay. Hashtags, yes or no?
Yes. You've got 30, use
Roughly.
them.
Okay, how many? You going to say 30?
Yeah, if you got 30, use all 30.
Okay, all right. How much time do you spend on social a day yourself? Not for clients, but yourself.
Probably like an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing you should be doing on social that you're not doing at the moment?
Lives.
Lives. Okay. And let's say, what's the strangest thing you've ever had happen on social? Like, what's a random weird occurrence or an opportunity that's happened that's come from social you never would have thought of in a million years?
I mean, I guess like my whole business sort of started through social. So that was a pretty cool, strange occurrence that happened. So yeah, I would say that. Oh, actually, I have a really good one. I have a really good one. I I met our old neighbor through Instagram. So I posted a photo of my cat and I put my location, like my geotag, and then some random woman contacted me and was like, "Hey, is this your cat?" and sent me a photo of a cat on her car. And I was like, "That is my cat." She's like, "I live on this street. Where do you live?" I was like, "I live right next door. Like I live on the same street." And that's how we met. So that was probably the strangest thing that ever happened.
This is the world we live in. We're literally living next door to someone else for years and years and years, and we meet through Instagram because of a cat.
Because of our cat, my cat, yeah. That was pretty cool.
Was your cat enjoying itself on your neighbor's car? I mean, is that where it goes to sleep?
Yeah, he's this big fat cat, and yeah, he goes and he'd like to sleep on her car because it would sit in the sun, so he loved it. Nice and
Is
warm
that
for him.
sound that's been in the background of your? Is that sound in the background? Has that been a cat? It
Maybe
sounds like a dog.
we have two dogs, a cat, and three chickens.
Okay.
So it can any one of them.
I have two cats and two chickens, so I feel you on the
Oh,
chickens part.
true.
They're the most stupid animals.
They're hilarious.
Literally. I mean, we've had them for a few weeks now. They still haven't started laying. They're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they always want corn. They don't want the feed anymore because corn's better. They're not laying eggs. I'm like, oh, if they don't start laying, I'm going to pick them up, shake them until the eggs come out.
Yeah, we've got three, so we get 3 eggs a day. And probably the funniest thing to feed them is pavlova. So at Christmas time, we had like so much left over
What?
pavlova, so we gave it to them, and they just loved it so much. But their beak would get stuck in it. It was really funny.
Is it safe? Is it safe to feed them pavlova? I mean,
Yeah, they eat anything except for
yeah, they do.
except for avocado cores and citrus isn't really recommended, but mine eat it anyway.
The weirdest feeling I had was when I went downstairs to put the chickens to bed or put them, back in their hutch. Then I came up and ate chicken. And at a
Yeah.
certain point, you're just like, I don't know
Mm.
how I feel about this. I feel conflicted. I don't know if you've ever felt the same way.
Sometimes we'll be like cooking barbecue and we've got chicken drumsticks on the barbecue and then we can hear the chicken squawking in the background. I'm like, oh no, I think we're going to hell.
Yeah, it's a weird world we live in, isn't it? Well, I'm going to eat these ones. These ones are our pets, and then this
Yeah.
one is the delicious one that's on the barbecue. In marinade sauce. It's like because I have my nephew is 5 years old, and he sees the chickens, and of course, are we going to eat them? Because it's a chicken. Like, no, and his dad goes, no, we're not going to eat them. These ones are, and he goes, why? These ones are pets. I'm like, oh, why? And then, you have that 5-year-old, why? Why aren't we eating these ones? Like, they look
Yeah.
delicious. Like, oh no, oh god. Okay.
Questions. Oh,
They're
bless.
good questions that
Yeah.
probably don't actually have a good answer, to be honest. But I guess someone's going to ask them.
Chicken
Okay. Renata, just before we get to the final 10 questions, because I always wrap up the interview with the final 10, any shout outs you want to give for supporting you, pageant, small business, otherwise?
Oh my gosh, I have so many shout outs, obviously to all my clients because they're awesome, especially to the Academy of Gymnastics because they were my first ever client and I'm still working with them 2 years later. And shout out to our pageant queens from Premier Elite because they've done such an amazing job, both past and present. So thank you, girls.
Perfect. When's the next Premier Elite pageant running?
The 22nd of January next year. So applications open on the 1st of June, which is next week.
Amazing. Hopefully Corona is a distant memory by then and we never have to talk about it ever again.
I doubt it, but hopefully.
I got to go and get vaccinated. Not looking forward to it. Okay. Question 1. These are the final 10. It's not a speed round, but you can speed through them if you so desire. Question 1. What is your favorite word?
Sassy.
Such a pageant queen answer. Sassy.
It's such a good word.
Let's say I agree to disagree on that one, but this is your interview, not mine. Question 2. What's your least favorite word?
Least favorite word. Probably moist. It's one of those words that is pronounced sort of how it sounds, Just moist.
It's the reason I'm laughing is because that's the most common answer I get to any of these questions. Is that
Oh,
one,
really?
moist? And it's almost exclusively female. It's a female answer. A guy has never said moist.
Wow.
It's always women. They just go moist, and the expression they have on their face when they say it's hilarious because they can't even say it without it's like moist. It's not moist. It's like moist. Question 3. In life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
What gets me excited? I love adventure. So it's been a bit hard with COVID because I love to travel and explore new places, but it just means that we get to explore new places in our city, like where we live, which is great too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about what turns you off?
I don't know. That's a good question. I really hate public toilets. So,
I guess that's.
Hey.
I was going to say that's probably fair enough. I don't think anyone gets excited at the prospect of using a public toilet.
Portaloos are the worst. But yeah.
You sound like you have a story about a portaloo just looking at the look on your face.
No, they're just awful, I always get I would have this horrible fear that you'll be sitting in one and someone will just come over and tip over and you'll just be in there with everything.
I prefer the visual of you're sitting there doing your thing and then someone comes with a forklift and takes you away. I think that'd be hilarious.
That'd be pretty
funny. All right. Question 5. What sound or noise do you love?
Sound or noise? I love the sound of my cat purring.
Oh, that's a good one. I have 2 cats. One sounds like a broken muffler. Sounds like something's
Uh-huh.
come loose. It's a horrible purr.
Oh,
And then the other one kind of is a rumble, just rumbles inside. What sort of purrs do your cats have?
I only have the one cat, but yeah, it's like a rumble sort of purr, but it's really soothing.
Mm, it
Yeah.
is. It's nice
Yeah.
to fall, put your head on the cat and just hear the rumble. What sound what sound or noise do you hate?
I really hate, plates, like ceramic plates, and when they sort of make that scratching sound. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
the worst.
Fair enough. Question 7. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
I'd love to be able to read people's minds.
I always think that's a dangerous one because then you're actually going to
I
find out
think
what people really think of you.
that's true, but I think it could be interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Question 8. What job or occupation other than your own would you most like to attempt?
What would I love to attempt? I have like this fascination with true crime. So I'd love to be like a detective or something, but in my head I know I could never do it.
I don't understand why you pageant girls are all so fascinated with crime and serial killers and
Oh, no,
murder and cold cases. It's really, really worrying.
it's really good.
Honestly,
Netflix provides so much for that addiction. Like every now and then there's like a new thing and I'm like, "Oh, I have to watch it." I just binge it.
there needs to be some sort of Netflix show about pageantry, and there's actually like a serial killer, like
Have you
a pageant queen who's actually a serial killer.
seen what's that show?
You're going to
Um
tell me there is one show, and I remember someone telling me that there is a show that's basically that, isn't it?
it's got Debbie Ryan in it, and she goes around and she's a serial killer and she kills her competitors to win the title.
Ah, based on a true story.
I'll have to think of the name. I can't remember it now.
Yeah, you're not the first person to tell me that. I can't remember it because I didn't watch it, but yeah, I
It's
remember
really
it was big.
cool. I watched it and I was like, at first, like, the show's so nice. It's about pageants and stuff. And then, like, the serial killing started happening. And I was like, what? This is not so nice.
Just just worried to find the one person who watches that and goes, actually, that's a pretty good idea. I'm like, oh, that's no,
It's called Insatiable.
that's it. Yeah. As soon as
Yeah.
you were about to say, it's like it's insatiable. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I should watch that. For me, it'd be homework. I should I could claim it as a business expense. Do
There
my
you go.
research.
Watching Netflix.
Uh exactly. Question 9: what job would you definitely not like to attempt?
I would hate to work in a morgue. Like, do the embalming and stuff. Dead people are scary.
I think that might be the quote that I take from my interview, which is sum it up as dead people are scary.
Like you see
I'll put
people
that
in
up on Twitter.
dead people are scary.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely that one.
Dead people are not scary. You only have to be scared of them when they come back to life. Dead people by themselves are not scary.
I don't know. Pretty scary.
Final question. If heaven
Uh-huh.
exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Um, I don't know. That's a really like loaded question, I feel.
A thought-provoking question. Let's see which way you go with it.
I feel like it'd be like, welcome home, because I feel like I'm a pretty spiritual person and I don't necessarily believe in a heaven or not, but I do believe that
Mhm.
there's some spirit, you know, thing that happens
Yeah,
afterwards. But I do believe that we came from that, so we're sort of going back to that. So that's really our true home.
beautiful.
That's what.
Okay. Well, Renata, that's about it. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you so much. It was great chatting.
Absolutely. And guys, if you have any questions about social media or you want to look at hiring Renata to get to work with you, Renata, what's the best place to contact you for that, for social media work?
Just go to Renata Grandao _comms and you can find all the info there.
Perfect. Okay. Renata, I'll keep you on the line for just a second, so don't hang up on me just yet. I'm going to hang up with the audience. Thanks to everyone for watching, whether it's live or on the replay, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder to you entrepreneurial types to come and join us at our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/The Pageant Boss. I'll see you inside and see you in the next episode.